My name is Angelica Smith, and this is why we should destigmatize trap rap. That's an interesting question because I don't know if I would say I enjoy it. I think that you can't really escape it coming from where I'm from. So it's like a lot of painful messages in trap a lot of the time. And sometimes it's turn up music, right? Like T.I. is a little bit more enjoyable to listen to sometimes, just depending on the content. But what I get out of it is just like that storytelling and that really authentic, like, this is what that person was going through at the time. And because I'm from an area that's similar to a lot of the areas where people who are making this music come from, it resonates with me. But it's really hard to listen to, so I can't really say that I enjoy it. I think that was a pivotal moment, right? Because it was like some activism messaging in that. And I think that that's always more palatable than just people's feelings sometimes, like you gotta connect it. So the song itself, I mean, it was a hit obviously on the radio and everything. I think that it inspired a lot of people to think about their platform because he in the song talks about his platform and how he needs to use it. But I also think that there were some pieces in there that I was just like, I think there needs to be a little more nuance to this, but that also talks to, I think, the way that people, it's his truth and how he's understanding the subject matter. So for me as an educator, a scholar activist, if you will, there's some like when he says like, I know all white people not racist, it's like, all white people don't practice in racism or like in racist practices, but all white people do benefit from racism, right? So it'd be little stuff like that I pick up on personally, but I think that it was a very provocative song, especially the part where he talks about his son being a monster and his daughter like kind of wilding out. It's like, why would you say that? You kind of got to go back into like the whole purpose of why he's talking about it, almost like, well, we didn't try to do it y'all way and y'all not responding well. So at this point, we gotta turn up. And that's exactly what happened with the George Floyd riots and Rodney King and many riots before, you know, you and I were even thought of. Yeah, I think it's a value because of that storytelling element. And when we talk about release and like mental health, that's really, that expression is very important. I think that it doesn't have a lot of value because a lot of people don't think that people from the hood have value. So their stories don't matter. And the fact of the matter is we are human, so all of our stories matter. So while again, like I said earlier, it can be painful to hear, it's like, that's somebody's truth, you know, and who am I to say what is or what's not valid? I think that it can have a positive impact on hip hop if folks are continuing to not only tell their story, but advocate for other people to be able to do it as well. I think that one of the things that I think about coming from the South Side of Chicago is how many people make it out and then they don't return, or they start to look down on the people who are still there. And I feel like at some point, we as humans have a responsibility to serve one another, and those communities that give us the material to even be able to write about these things, under unfortunate circumstances, but nonetheless, they get left in the dust, right? So I look at people like Nipsey, who was actively giving back to his community, you know what I mean? And I'm like, that to me is, if we're gonna talk about it, let's also be about it. I think that there can be a relationship between trap rap and mental health, but I also feel like there's a relationship between music and mental health, period. Right? It's very, when you look at ways to like self-soothe or cope, if you Google it right now, one of the first things it's gonna say, turn on some music that you enjoy, you know, let your mind just go there. I think on the perspective of the songwriter, it's that release. So it's interesting to me how we have this push for mental health right now in our society, but that the ways in which people are choosing to cope with it are the things that are being criticized, opposed to the source under which they have to cope in the first place, right? That's a really peculiar situation. So, yeah, I think that is definitely connected to mental health. And I also think that there has to be something after that. you know what I mean? Like that's the initial expression. And I'm also very curious as to how these songwriters, these rappers or performers are taking care of themselves beyond that, because being in the spotlight even, you know, it brings its own set of challenges. So I'm always curious about that. I think we protect those stories by not judging them, honestly, like letting them be free to express themselves in that way. And I also feel like it's incredibly important to hold people accountable. So one of the reasons why trap rap is so difficult for me to listen to sometimes is because a lot of the messaging is very harmful toward women. And as a woman, and as a black woman particularly, it's like, dude, I get it. I also grew up in the hood. I know what that looks like. We had to walk the same paths to get to the same places through gang territory or whatever. But what you're not gonna do is sit back and what I'm not gonna do is sit back and be okay with you using me as a punching bag to release that stress. Like we have to figure out how to work together. So I'm not judging you, you know, but when it comes to my expense, it's like just the same way you choosing yourself by choosing to put this in a song and getting that expression out, I gotta choose myself and say, I'm not gonna be subjected to harm. And I think that it honestly goes both ways. I think that a lot of black people are hurting in general, and we look at each other as the enemy, and it's like, no, we need to figure out how we're gonna work together. I don't know if black folks will ever escape the trap, honestly. I think that we've been in the trap since 1619. And it's sad to say that, and I think some people might think it's cynical, but if we just look at the way that history has played out, racism is profitable. And as long as racism is profitable, there's going to be a ghetto, there's going to be a hood, there's going to be underfunded schools, there's going to be food, there's going to be fewer opportunities for people who look like you and me. So I think that escape physically, not positive, but mentally and spiritually, I think it is just about enhancing each other's lives, right? And part of that, it can be through telling your story through trap rap, right? Or not judging somebody's story through trap rap. Honoring whatever type of art that people are putting into the world, as long as it's, of course, not harmful to other people and especially to other black people. But in terms of like getting out, I can't say that I'm positive that's gonna happen.